I quite like the Renaissance Fair, honestly. I'm not the best at like costuming or anything, but I enjoy it. It's nice to get out on a weekend, and go and be in a world of high fantasy and low technology. Obviously, it's not obliged that you partake, that you dress up and whatnot. Some people definitely do. Some people do very impressively. Some people are just, in their civilians, if you will, just their everyday wear. I've seen at least one fursuit, and every now and then you find folks coming in just doing their own thing. I saw Totoro earlier, and the vessel, uh, and a Luffy, but they were like a child, so obviously I wasn't going to film that. And I'm sure a comment can be made about, we want to maintain the aesthetic of the Renaissance Fair being the fantasy world with some fey folk and some mythical creatures, but keep it to tone. Uh, in the moment you do that, the Joker's going to show up. And yeah, I know the Joker is DC, but like that literally happened last year. Anyway, the point of all that is, yes, the contrast and overlaps with high fantasy, magical swords and sorcery, and superhero. That's a thing, you know? So on the one hand, it's not surprising that there would be a Marvel set for Magic the Gathering, nor is it a huge surprise that there are people who are not very chuffed about it. I'm only doing these videos for normal full-size sets, so I haven't actually had a Universes Beyond set to talk about in any of these. And I'm not a UB hater, personally. It's fine. It's the ultimate showdown of Ultimate Destiny. Remember that video? Remember that? That's a thing. That's a thing that we liked. So no, I was never going to complain about the Smash Brosification of Magic. It's whatever. But the point of these videos is to interrogate how weird these sets are. And sure, a lot of that is mechanical and structural, and we will get to that. We have reasons to get to that. But I mean, it's the elephant in the room to focus on the vibes. And hey, that's what we talk about first anyway, so let's go with it. And of course, the usual standard disclaimer, weird doesn't mean bad. Are the vibes rancid? No. I'm going to say no. The vibes are weird. They're different. Spoiler alert, this is a weird set. But are they rancid? Is this totally unbefitting of Magic the Gathering? No. No, it's not. And part of why I say that is the whole question of what is superhero? Legally, there's a whole trademark kind of thing around that, but conceptually, what is superhero? That's kind of a big and kind of an open question. There is scholarship about that question. People have really interrogated what it means for a character to be a superhero, for what it means to have superheroes in a culture. What does it say about the culture itself, about those characters? It's a fairly big space. And it's very easy to look at things even older than that. Look at Zorro or the Scarlet I almost said the Scarlet Pumpernickel. The Scarlet Pimpernel. I think the Scarlet Pumpernickel is a Looney Tunes gag. You can look at things that are even older that clearly draw a line to the superheroes that we have and know now. You can do that because Stan Lee has done that. And depending how loose you want to be with your definitions, we can go back to Greek myth on some of this. I mean, Marvel literally goes back to Greek myth on some of this, so, it's not exactly unfounded to try and draw a very long line in defining superheroes, and a line that intersects the lineage that leads to high fantasy and magic. So at least on paper, it doesn't seem like the weirdest idea. I can see why, when the Universes Beyond initiative started, they were like, we got to get Marvel. Do I think it works? That's a different question. This has nothing to do with the plane of New York City or whatever. I think this is actually best captured by a video that MTG Goldfish did fairly recently, just like a week ago. Magic is, for the most part, about building a world. Comic books, for the most part, are about building characters. And anything you say in these generalizations, there's going to be exceptions. Of course there are. Storytelling in Magic, it's like Dark Souls. This could be a whole separate video. This is a whole take. Magic is just like Dark Souls, okay? You know, you're not usually interested in an Iron Man comic that's going through the bureaucracy and daily runnings of Stark Industries. Generally, you don't care. Some of you do. I know some of you do, but generally, it's about the guy. And so that makes for an inherent mismatch. Do I think you could make a Marvel set that is centered on world building? Yeah, I think you could. I don't think this one is. This feels more like a greatest hits album. You know, it's pulling all the characters from all the settings to make sure that no matter where your entry point into this realm of comics is, the thing you know is probably there. And it's got those deep cuts, because if you're making a greatest hits album, put some deep cuts on, your fans will appreciate it. I don't know why I have a strong opinion on this in particular, but I do. So then would I say that Marvel Superheroes, the set, has the weirdest vibes of modern Magic? I don't think so. I think part of that is because Magic has made some weird swings in recent memory. So yeah, I'll re-emphasize that, you know, weird does not mean bad. I don't mind these sets with more modern aesthetics, more modern approaches, but I get the whole vibe complaint on a set like this. But you know, there is a reason that when I do these videos, the vibes are just one part of the whole equation. At the end of the day, this is a card game. This is a game with game mechanics. How are the mechanics of the game? The Marvel set only introduces 2 new mechanics. We've got teamwork and we've got power up. In other words, we've got kicker. It's kicker. I know people say that a lot about a lot of different Magic mechanics, but I feel like that's a legitimate claim to make on these. Teamwork is an additional cost. That cost is just tapping creatures you control. So it's an additional cost, so it's kicker. You know, you could write a teamwork cost as a kicker cost. The templating would allow for it. It would be wordy and messy, but like you could. And I say that because they have come close. Blood Tribute has a kicker cost of tapping a creature you control. It doesn't care about power or toughness or mana cost or anything like that. It cares about type, but still. So, you know, teamwork isn't beating the allegations. Power up, I'll grant you. It's an activated ability that you can only do once, so it's exhaust, but it's discounted if the creature just came in. So it's kind of an alternative cost, but it's kind of an activated ability, so it's kind of exhaust, it's kind of kicker. Honestly, that is a way to make an interesting new mechanic that's not going to completely break the bank. The bank being, you know, game balance. You know, it becomes reasonable to design a card that's built around having a certain cost and abilities and power toughness, because these are all creatures. It's a Marvel set, they're all creatures. And then give it a power-up ability that basically templates into a different, bigger creature. You could have a card that if you play it and power it up on that turn, it's just Colossal Dreadmaw, but if you don't, it's like a baby Dreadmaw? That could be fine. So that's actually a really nice bit of design space that they're playing into. You know, a way to basically let one creature be 2 creatures. Now the set is doing some other things. Of course, it's got the heroes versus villains, you know, typal archetype kind of stuff, and a few color pairs that care about that in particular. Artifacts are a thing. There's conniving, and there are the handful of plans, the enchantments that they're doing quest enchantment stuff. It's not structural like sagas. It's more like calling artifacts books. So there are mechanics that are old and borrowed, ones that don't have a whole lot of mechanical meaning. There's also the word worthy, which shows up once. If I'm not going to talk about paradigms, I'm not going to talk about worthy. What I am going to talk about is that these new mechanics are actually pretty reasonable. They show up a reasonable amount throughout the set. They function pretty cleanly. They don't do things that are too bizarre in the Magic space. Power Up almost feels like it should have shown up elsewhere, like a while ago. So for a set where maybe the vibes might feel a little weird, like mechanically, I got no complaints. Honestly, I'm a little surprised and impressed, we're gonna say, that the Marvel set is mechanically so normal. But structurally, first off, the set it's only slightly large, just by 5 cards. So that's not that bad. The creature count and the legendary count is a lot. A lot. This is the most legendary creatures of any set ever. Everything above common is legendary. We're disregarding Jumpstart and Commander decks and all that stuff in all of this. We're just talking what's in the boosters. And there's a lot of legendaries in those boosters. Is it too many legendaries? Probably, honestly. I don't even feel very qualified to make that assessment, but I'm like, yeah, probably. I get why. I get the context. I don't know that it really could be done differently in a meaningful way. Maybe you could save some of those characters for the 4 other inevitable Marvel sets, I guess. But again, Marvel as a brand, as a concept, is character-driven design. So yeah, there's going to be all these characters and all these legendary characters. So I would have expected to see a lot of creatures with Enter's effects kind of taking the role of sorceries or enchantments or artifacts, what have you, non-creature stuff. It felt like there were fewer ETB effects overall compared to other sets. And in running the math, which, as a reminder, I'm keeping track of instances of evergreen keywords across the whole set. White in particular is loaded with keywords, and it feels like black cards are getting the short end of the stick this time. And there's a certain like flavorful value to that, I guess. A lot of superheroes with superpowers are in white. A lot of the villains are in black and doing more machinations, I guess. But then you get to the multicolor, the signpost cards, and you're like, here's all the stuff. I feel like this is going to be a set where you really want to have your solid 2-color pairing. And thankfully there are 10 pairings. There are 10 archetypes this time. It has been a hot minute since we've had a set with 10 proper archetypes. So yeah, this is structurally kind of a bizarre set. And like bizarre for flavor reasons. Like you would get angry people if you try to claim that some of these heroes are not legendary creatures. I do find it weird though that there's one thing that's looking at legendary or historic at all. I just feel like if you're going to have the most legendary creatures ever in a set ever, maybe you do something with that fact, you know? Like I almost wanted to knock it way to the bottom just for having really weird structural stuff and not taking full advantage of it. But I don't know, maybe I'll reassess that list again and maybe that'll slide up a little further. None of this is hard and fast. I've been trying to be empirical about this, but every set that Wizards does, they are doing something different. They're never sticking exactly to their templates or to their design skeletons, which is for the best, frankly. But it does make a comparative analysis kind of tricky. I will say I'm both surprised and not surprised at how weird the Marvel set kind of comes together. Because yeah, on the one hand, the superhero aesthetic and mentality doesn't really line up with Magic. But this also feels like, of all of the Universes Beyond sets thus far, and I'll even include Lord of the Rings in this statement, it feels like the one most geared towards having mass market appeal. Like, most people know Marvel. Most people have opinions on Marvel. That's probably the more important part of that sentiment. Like, yeah, a lot of people have watched Avatar, a lot of people have played Final Fantasy. They might have forgotten Avatar, they may have just played FF7 and that's it. Marvel has been a major cultural touchstone for a lot of my adult life now that I'm saying it out loud. And that's just in the movie sense, which this set isn't really about. But that is where a lot of this stuff is going to be known from for the general audience. So I would not have been surprised if Wizards tried to be incredibly safe with this set, you know? And I suppose in some ways they were. The mechanics aren't very bizarre, they aren't very complicated. It's just kicker. But I feel like if they really wanted to be safe, they have their design skeleton. They would lean on that even harder and stay away from really funky effects and potentially unexpected interactions and poison counters. Why are you here all of a sudden? Of the full-size Universes Beyond sets that have come out since I started playing Magic again, this is one that I have like fairly little interest in terms of the brand. I'm not going to dismiss the set out of hand. I've never been the type to do that, you know? But hey, I'm also not going to stand here and say it's not a weird set. But you know, I'm willing to give it a try. I don't mind it being around. Just I don't mind folks doing weird cosplays at the Renaissance Fair. I don't mind the occasional Trekkie that shows up at those. That's a thing. That used to be more of a thing apparently, and now they quarantine them to one of the weekends. There's like a dedicated weekend at the Ren Fair for like time travelers. Like, yeah, show up as Doctor Who if you want to. Because hey, I'm happy to go that first weekend. That's all about swords and sorcery and fae folk and whatnot. But some people want to get weird with it, and you can be weird. That's cool. Hopefully your costume is more practical. You can't fit anything as freaking utility belt. This thing's useless.